Welcome to Admin Setup for Transaction Types. This is a large section, so we have split it up into a couple of different videos. So begin by selecting the Admin tab, then scroll down to Transaction Types. So this video is going to cover the second half of these columns. So we're going to start with adjustment type and go all the way to the end through Recursive Days. So if you are looking for information based on the first half of these columns, please refer back to the previous video. And we also have a separate video for predefined notes. You can sort your transaction types by business type. I'm going to focus in on bookkeeping for now. Like I said, we're starting with a column for adjustment type. So what the adjustment type is if you are creating an adjustment transaction, as you can see we have one down here that's just an adjustment, so it's not a fee or a payment, but we're just adjusting the account, balancing it out or something like that. If you want to open up the adjustment field in the transaction, make sure you just check that box and then that field will be open. And then the next column for adjustment type method. Now you can create these adjustment type methods to be what you want them to be in the drop-down, and that's done under admin adjustment types, and there is a separate video on that. But these are the adjustment types that we have added. So if you wanted a default adjustment type in there, you could pick one of the ones that you have set up. Okay, for hours and billable rates, this will open up the hours field in the transaction. So if you were doing time and billing and you want to track your hours, you should check this box, and then you can open up that hours field and track the number of hours and put that right in the transaction, and it's also going to show up in the invoice. There actually is, though, a separate video on billable hours in the transaction section of the video library, which will show you how to actually log all of your billable hours. So this is just focusing on how to actually set up the transactions so they will appear in your transaction section, but there is much more detailed information on how to actually log those billable hours for you. The default hours, if there is a certain number of hours that you usually bill for a particular transaction, for example, we have monthly payroll here, we have the default hours of 4, and then we have a billable rate of $50. So when we record this transaction, it's going to actually record $200. So it's going to take the 4 hours and it will show the 4 hours, and then it will show the $200. So that's just the default. So if you have, certain fees that you generally charge for a particular transaction, you can put that in there. And again, within the client's file, you always have the option to override those hours. Note required. If you check this box, then a note gets it's required to put in a note for every transaction. So if you're tracking time for maybe admin work, you might want your employees to put a note in there to track exactly what they were working on. Business type. To select which business type you want this transaction to apply to. So you can have very specific transactions for your specific business types that you have set up within your office. So these are just our bookkeeping transactions, but it's really easy to go and look at all of our transactions for tax prep or another business type. So you want to select which business type you want that transaction to apply to, or you could have one that applies to all business types. Now this transaction grouping here, this is strictly tied to the bookkeeping feature within Atom. These are balance sheet items. So if you're going to use Atom for bookkeeping, I'm going to refer you to the bookkeeping section in the video library. So just your normal day-to-day transactions with your client's files, you're not going to use this transaction type grouping. And then the recursive days, if you have transactions that recur, you can enter the number of days here. So again, back to weekly payroll, this one's set up for 30, should be set up for probably 7. If you have transactions that recur, you enter the number of days. So then that transaction will recur that day. So this particular transaction is going to post every 30 days if we mark it as recursive in the transaction. So that is all for the second half of admin for transaction types. Thank you.